Autocross is a form of solo racing where cars run a course marked out by cones and they run against a clock. People like it a lot because it's cheaper and safer than road course racing. You can go autocrossing in any kind of car. I mean, there's events that'll let you drive up in your mom's SUV if you wanted to. But if you really want to be competitive, you need a car with good power, great handling, and preferably lightweight. None of that's going to matter if you've got lousy tires on the car, because that's really the only part of the car that's touching the road. We're really lucky these days because there's a lot of tires to choose from, and they're not just race-only tires. These are tires that you can keep on your car all year round. We wanted to find out how they handled on a typical pro touring style muscle car. So we went over to Tire Rack, we got a whole bunch of tires, and we got a 1970 Satellite to test them on. Tire Rack normally uses 2012 BMWs for their tire testing, but this is hot rod and that will not do. We brought in a real muscle car. Well, sort of a real muscle car. We brought in a four-door muscle car. Kevin Wesley's Hotchkiss Taxi.
Well, the Satellite was really built more for fun than anything else. It was just a car that I had sitting in the shop, and we kind of swept up the parts off the floor for the motor and said, hey, let's throw something together that'll be fun. You know, we won't have to worry about dinging it or scratching the paint. But something we can just go spin the tires, do burnouts, and take people for rides at the autocross. And it's great. It's an entirely different experience to ride in the back seat at speed on an autocross course than it is in the front. It's just a completely different perspective, and it's fun.
For people who don't know what pro touring cars are, I mean, it's a muscle car, but it's not sort of your stock restoration, and it's also not a drag car. What is pro touring?
It's really taking an old car. It could be a muscle car, but I mean, like mine, it's a four-door, so it's not traditional muscle car, but it's putting a good suspension on it, typically running a 5-speed or a 4-speed manual transmission, and just going to the autocross and an event it's not really quote-unquote designed to be good for, and just seeing what it can do. It's running a Kiesler RS600 5-speed. It's still running an 8 3/4, it's running a True Track diff 373 gear, but we're running a stroker, so it's a 400 block with a 440 crank, aluminum heads. We put a carburetor on it, put a good cooling system in it, and then we put a good suspension on it. It's run all Hotchkiss TVS suspension components.
What are you interested in learning from this test?
Really learning what's the best tire. Pro touring events and autocross events in general are becoming much more competitive, and you need those extra tenths of a second. There's so many different variables in tire construction, tread compound, carcass construction, and that's really what we're here to find, is what's the fastest tire and what's going to work best with the car.
So we wanted to do a good test for you, a really scientific test. So we got a pro driver, Woody Rogers, who does all the testing at Tire Rack. He knows what he's doing, he knows the track, and he's going to be completely neutral, and all the tires are going to get a fair shake.
We have 6 tires to test today, plus a control tire for reference, so we know any kind of changes we have in the track or the course or my learning curve. Today we're testing the BFGoodrich G-Force Rival, the Dunlop Direzza Z11. We have the Hankook Ventus R-S3, the Michelin Pilot Super Sport, the Falken Azenis RK615k, and the Nitto NT05. For a comparison or baseline reference, we're also driving on a Bridgestone tire, the Potenza RE11. We're driving on 275 35 18 all the way around on this car, mounted on 18 9.5 wheels. Well, to measure the performance of each tire today, we're using 2 things. One is my butt dyno. What does it feel like to me? But to get hard objective data, similar to the lap timer that would be used in an autocross event, we're using an onboard data logger that we use here for tire testing at Tire Rack. It's a race technology unit that has GPS plus an onboard accelerometer. And so it tells us the lap time, but it also will show us the lateral G's, the acceleration and braking forces. And when I look at that picture for each of the laps, it'll give a clear picture, what is the car feeling from the tire's performance. And I can compare that to what it feels like to me as a driver. I learned a long time ago testing tires, what feels good isn't always fast, and what's fast doesn't always feel good. So we're going to see the 2 data points, my subjective ratings and the onboard data, and combine them and see which tire is actually the best. Well, the test course we have may not be the most exciting autocross course, but it really is a good tire testing course, and it's designed to separate the basic performance attributes of a tire. We start right into a 5-cone slalom that will really establish or evaluate the transitional response and capability of each tire. You then have a couple of 90-degree corners that lead to an increasing S-bend section, really, really tight 180. It then bends into a left-hand curve at higher speed, and then a really fast on-power, high-speed, 55, 60-mile-an-hour sweeper down to a really hard brake zone for another 90-degree corner. So each of these different sections of the track separate the performance attributes of the tire. Transitional response, cornering capability, acceleration and braking traction that really helps us identify the performance attributes of each tire. I started autocrossing in 1989, soon after I got out of college, and was hooked with the thrill of the sport. I've never driven a pro touring prep car, and I was absolutely blown away at how well that thing handled. It does not feel as heavy as it is. It turns fantastic. And the transitions in the slalom, that what really surprised me. How quickly this car will change direction is very impressive. For tire testing here at Tire Rack, we normally use BMW 3 Series, the ultimate driving machine. We've ran similar tires around our track versus the ones we're testing today with the Satellite, and the BMWs are a full second slower per lap than the Satellite is. So there is no replacement for displacement, as they say.
I always sort of thought that tires were just a big lump of rubber and how could they be any different one from another, but there actually is a whole bunch of structure inside. So when we were taking a break, I spoke with Matt about what goes into making a tire. So one of the things that I was reading about when I was researching tires is tires, rather than just being rubber poured in a mold, are almost more like carbon fiber, or it's a composite with a lot of different strands taking force in different directions.
Very, very, very true. I mean, a lot of components all doing different things, but the key is how they make them all work together, and that's where the manufacturers have gone in and they tweak and tune things. Really, as we talked about some of these angles on these belts, I mean, a half degree difference can really make a big difference in the way it works and really that contact patch. The things they do with silicas and different compounds they add to make this rubber not only perform and give you the ultimate grip, but also be able to withstand, over time to give you mileage. It's really one of the most important components, not only on a race car, but on any car that you have, because all of the technology you have in that vehicle has to really work through these 4 patches.
After we had gone through all of the tires, Woody and I went inside and he explained to me some of the results.
Back in the day, you had a simple lap timer and what the driver feels, and those are both very telling things. But ultimately, racing is decided by the lap time, so that's a critical component as well. The data we get from the onboard data logger really just takes it another step and helps put some visual to what the driver is feeling.
All right, what am I looking at?
We're looking at the friction circle for the best single lap of the fastest tire we had. This is a summary of the entire lap. So it's the 10,000 foot view of the tire's performance all the way around the lap. So don't think of it as this is going from left and right. This is at any millisecond in time, what was the G loading on the car and in what direction, and it puts a point on the graph at that moment in time. So we're just seeing all these pixels coming together and beginning to form a shape. It's very concentrated. It looks like nothing's going on. That's because I could easily maximize the performance of the tire in every direction, accelerating, braking, and cornering left and right. A tire that is less capable, it's not as far out on the axis points, and it's a bit more jumbled because it was harder to read, harder to maximize the tire all the way around the course. It's a multi-purpose discipline, autocross is. The tire has to be able to do everything. It has to be able to accelerate, it has to be able to brake, it has to be able to corner, sometimes simultaneously. One thing I found driving on the tires was some tires were better than others at doing 2 things at once. I can't change the laws of physics. I can't do more than what is possible. I can't get the tire to do more than what's possible. So the tire has only so much grip, but how well does it share grip from cornering to acceleration or braking? That's what helps make a tire easier to drive and ultimately go faster.
All the brands in our test were good, but the best in terms of both lap time and driver feel was the Dunlop Direzza Z2, almost a second faster than most of the other tires.
So all day we were just focused on science, like let's do this the same every time, don't get out of hand, we want really good numbers. Well, we wanted to see some tire smoke. I mean, how do you test tires if you don't see if they can make tire smoke? After we got all of our numbers, we picked a sacrificial set of tires and Kevin got behind the wheel. to know more about Kevin's car and you want to know which tires to put on your car. So go to hotrod.com, keyword search tire rack.